Okay, so now let's talk about the intellectual context, particularly of Merton's strain theory. So if you are following along in your slide, you see this name again that we mentioned in the social context, which is Emil Durkheim. And we've talked about the fact that he gave us this concept called anomie. Again, anomie describes this notion of normlessness. It refers to a state or condition in society in which the norms are no longer effective in regulating behavior. In particular, Durkheim examined suicide data from 19th century Europe. And I told you Durkheim was a Frenchman. And he found some interesting things. In particular, Durkheim noted a lower suicide rate among the lower class. And as such, he concluded that being a member of the lower class actually insulated people against suicide, whereas being a member of the higher class, perhaps having more to lose in terms of financial standing or status when something went wrong, caused people to be in despair and perhaps more likely to commit suicide. Interestingly, even though Durkheim found that poverty or being poor insulated people against suicide, Merton used this concept of anomie to explain higher rates of crime among the lower class. So they may have been insulated from suicide according to Durkheim, but Merton says it's being a member of the lower class that actually makes people more vulnerable to being impacted by crime. All right. Merton puts a slight tweak on anomie as Durkheim defined it. So here is Merton's definition, and it becomes important. For Merton, anomie is the disjuncture between goals and means in a society. I'll say that again. For Merton, anomie is a disjuncture between the goals and the means in society. In other words, what are the social goals? Is it to achieve what we call the American dream? You live in the suburbs, you have a white picket fence, you have 2.5 children, which is the American average number of children. Is it to hold a certain job, to have certain status, to be respected in a certain way in our society? If those are the goals, what happens when you're unable to meet those goals? What happens when you perceive that there are barriers that stop you from achieving the social expectations that everyone in a particular society has? All right. So for Merton, anomie is the disjuncture between the goals and means in a society. And he argues that not everyone has equal access to achieving the goals of a society. In other words, many people don't have the means to achieve the goals. And in such cases, there will be a disjuncture between goals and means. We also have Talcott Parsons, who gives us this notion of structural functionalism. He explains social events by emphasizing the ways in which society is structured. We talked about the fact that strain theories are structural theories. He saw society as a balance between social forces. And when there was an imbalance in one institution, it could bring about changes in all aspects of society and could upset the balance and harmony and equilibrium of society. For instance, when we place too much emphasis on financial success, it can throw other aspects of our society, such as family, religion, laws. It kind of throws everything else out of balance when we place too much emphasis on one thing. All right. Also, we have Sorokin and Simpson, who called attention to Durkheim's work on anomic suicide and the division of labor, respectively. Right. So they kind of look at how society is organized financially in terms of how people make their living, how they provide for themselves and their families, and how changes in capitalism or other aspects of the economy can actually facilitate drastic changes. In their case, they're looking at suicide, but if we look at Talcott Parsons, he looks at other institutions. All right. And lastly, we have Karl Marx. Karl Marx, we know him as being anti-capitalist. He is seen clearly in Merton's focus on the American capitalist. So Merton focuses a lot on the financial system that we've set up in this society, particularly with its emphasis on financial success. Of course, Karl Marx predicted many years ago, decades, centuries almost ago, that our capitalist economy would be the demise or the downfall of society. And Merton picks up on some of those things, and we see them come to life in his theory. All right. There's a need for social control through social institutions. When we have unlimited aspirations, it creates pressure for deviant solutions. I'll say that again. When we have unlimited aspirations, particularly financial aspirations, it creates pressure that can lead people to deviant solutions. Unlimited aspirations creates pressure for deviant solutions. All right.